with AJ Lee talking about returning to wrestle and Peacock blocking WWE partners from sharing Summerslam clips. This is Wrestling Hub. My name is John and you're watching the Wrestling Report for October 9th. Before we get into the rest of the video, make sure you subscribe to Wrestling Hub and turn on all notifications to stay up to date with everything in the world of pro wrestling. After having an incredible career in WWE, Bryan Danielson made the jump to AEW where he looks to be happier than ever. Speaking to WDEL, he said AEW is modernizing pro wrestling and is bringing in younger fans. The one thing that I think is really cool about AEW is that if you haven't watched wrestling in a long time or you've fallen away from it, I encourage you to check it out because AEW is modernizing pro wrestling. A lot of pro wrestling has been stuck in an older mindset, but I think younger fans are really being drawn to AEW because they're modernizing. The world has changed so much in the 20 years since I started wrestling. The speed at which we expect things to happen has changed so much. AEW has taken those changes and put them into the wrestling. During the most recent draft, Hit Row was called up from NXT to Smackdown as Edge appears to be a big fan. A member of the faction Top Dollar told the Jobbing Out podcast what the Rated R superstar said to the group. We're changing the game. That's the thing I'm most excited about, is because when I come back through the curtain and Edge tells me this is what we need. This is 2021, this is today's wrestling, this is what we need. To hear Edge say that to me about an idea that I came up with 3 years ago before I was even here, and to see it go all the way through to fruition, and then not only did it work for me, but it worked for my boy, it worked for my girl, it worked for my man Swerve. All four of us are able to eat off this. Following his run as NXT champion, Karrion Kross finds himself on Monday Night Raw with him now wearing a mask. Speaking to WWE Deutschland, he was asked about partnering with Scarlett as he responded, "Well, since you asked me, because I don't try to, I like to see what fans think and see and then play off that. I don't like leading people into stuff. I feel like it's sort of a cheap way to do things, but if you're asking, I would say Triple H and Stephanie, under the right circumstances in the right place and the right time. I think if something like that can happen, I think we could all blow the roof off the place. I really do." The current United States champion Damian Priest sat down with SuperLuchas.com to talk about working with Bad Bunny on the road to WrestleMania 37. He noted how their first meeting at the WWE Performance Center led to Bunny getting physical at the 2021 Royal Rumble. The PC was where Bad Bunny was. When he was on NXT, which is like the farm of Raw and SmackDown, they told me that I was going to be promoted to Raw and that I was going to be part of a team because Bad Bunny was going to enter. The first thing I said was, how are they going to give the name Bad Bunny to a wrestler when there is already a singer named Bad Bunny? You don't use your brain? And they looked at me and said, that's the Bad Bunny. It was a surprise to know that he was going to wrestle. That same day, I met him the day of the Royal Rumble 2021 and we got along well from the first moment. We talked, we made jokes, and we quickly entered the ring and I taught him some things. That same day of the Rumble, a producer gave the idea of Bad Bunny throwing himself over Miz and Morrison. I went and told him if he dared to do that. He said, well, if I can practice it, let's do it. And I taught him to jump from the corner with another star. It looks easy, but it's not. In fact, I was the first to receive him on the air. He jumped on me and did it just once and said, okay, I can do it. I felt comfortable. If they told me to jump from the top rope to the floor like I did, I would say, and how many are going to receive me? Only 2 guys, like with Bad Bunny? I would have said no. Priest then noted that there was talk early on to not have him tag team with Bad Bunny as they were considering a replacement for the match against Miz and Morrison at Mania, but they had a big supporter backstage to make sure Priest and Bunny were together for the show. And the next day on Raw, they told me that maybe they were going to change Bad Bunny's partner, but one of my bosses, Triple H, said that he absolutely does not. And then Bad Bunny, he told them himself that he wanted to work with me. That was great. A lot of people thought we weren't going to get along because it was a weird combination. Me being a rock music fan and him being a trap and reggaeton singer, but it wasn't like that. I like Bad Bunny. Actually, the only music I don't like is country. And yes, I like rock, but if I want to go out to dance and be with women, I'm not going to go to a rock concert. Give me Bad Bunny's music so I can dance with many women. But for Damian Priest, the wrestler, it was a bit weird, I must admit. But we both got along really well, and we have in common that a lot of people told us that we had to change many things, but we achieved our dreams in our way as rock stars. I talked to him about this. It was a dream for him, but he didn't have time to enter the ring. He was a fan since he was little. He had the dream of being a wrestler, but then years later, he used his music fame to be able to fulfill this other dream. Thanks to the pandemic, it worked because he didn't have tours and he had free time to wrestle. I talked to him on the billboards about when he is going to return to WWE, and he told me that it has to be when he has full time, because he's not going to do it just to do it. He wants to be focused 100% on wrestling, and I love that from him. After everything went well at Mania, he has now more desire than before to wrestle again. And if you laugh because I taught him how to jump rope on the same day as the Rumble, well, let me tell you that 3 of us taught him that Canadian Destroyer just one night before WrestleMania. Priest would go on to note how impressive it was for Bunny to pull off a Canadian Destroyer at the event despite the little time he had to prepare, and that spot in particular being put together at the last minute. He told me, I don't know if I can do that, so I said, yeah, that's very easy. He's a super talent. At first he was thinking about it, but then said, oh, forget it, come on. He did it once and it worked out well, and he said, that's it, enough. Then he did it at WrestleMania, and that's a complicated move. I lived part of my life in Dorado and another in Vega Baja, where Bad Bunny is from. What a coincidence, and the sister of my stepfather was the school teacher of Bad Bunny's brother, and when I told Bunny her name, which is Falu, a very strange, unusual name, Bad Bunny was moved, because she was the teacher from her brother and everyone loves her. I could not believe it. My mom was the one who told me to comment on that to Bad Bunny. I thought it was a lie, but I had to ask Bad Bunny because otherwise my mother was not going to leave me alone. Hail Mary. I had to call my mom later and tell her that it was true. AJ Lee is now an executive producer for Women of Wrestling, and talking about being in the promotion, she mentioned returning to the ring to wrestle. I say the same thing in every interview, and it's never say never, but don't hold your breath. And what I mean by that is that I never say never to anything. Physically, mentally, emotionally, I'm healed from everything I've gone through in wrestling. I could technically do it, but I am so enjoying letting the next generation have their spotlight. I got to do everything I want to do, so it would have to be, is that challenge there? I don't think the girls need me there. I think they're going to take over the world all by themselves. While she is in the promotion to give back to wrestling at this point, it seems possible that she could step between the ropes for a match down the road. The supersized edition of Smackdown will air on FS1, with them switching from Fox due to the MLB playoffs. The program will be a 2.5-hour show, meaning it will go head-to-head with the first 30 minutes of AEW Rampage. AEW President Tony Khan took to Twitter to make his intentions clear as he wrote, I saw you're doing a half-hour head-to-head with us. I can't wait to finally beat your main show head-to-head. It's been a long time coming. See you next Friday for Rampage. I already announced the Rampage card for live next Friday, and it's straight fire, Chief. The matches announced for Rampage include CM Punk taking on Matt Sydal, Ruby Soho facing the Bunny, and Men of the Year and Junior Dos Santos going up against the Inner Circle. There have been some previously noted issues between NBCU's Peacock and Fox, as the latter has not been happy with WWE promoting the former streaming service on Smackdown. Now it's been reported that Peacock interfered with how USA Network and Fox could cover Summerslam. It was said by Andrew Zarian of Mat Men Pro Wrestling Podcast that Peacock did not permit Fox or USA Network's social media to post SummerSlam videos. Despite perceived coexistence between Peacock and USA Network, we're told by Mat Men's Andrew Zarian that Peacock did not permit Fox or USA Network social media to post videos from SummerSlam. Instead, the platforms were limited to GIFs. In some big guy news, former WWE IC champion Ryback celebrated a win on Twitter with him getting his blue verified checkmark back. WWE and Ryback are in a battle over his name, with the latter claiming that Vince McMahon's company had his social media profile suppressed as the big guy continues to collect evidence. After showing performance on a tweet, he would post a follow-up message letting fans know that he is making progress. Controversial tweet on Brock showing fantastic engagement, far over the 1% that is considered great for Twitter. Twitter, yet impression stays super low because it isn't seen by enough of my followers. We'll continue to show what's going on, so this is all documented for the future. With many wondering when Ryback will return to the ring, one thing is certain: the fight on social media seems far from over. Following Tony Khan saying he is ready for AEW Rampage to go head-to-head with Smackdown, one fan responded saying Khan's comment might age poorly given that Rampage will be going up against Sasha Banks versus Becky Lynch in the main event. The AEW president would reply, "If I'm not sweating it, you shouldn't be either. This is what sports are about. Set a goal and try your best. We've got a great Rampage card Friday plus big Dynamite matches Saturday. I expect to do well, but regardless of next Friday's stats, it'll be a great weekend for the fans." Khan would go on to write that he's hoping to recreate the rivalry between WWE and WCW from the 90s. Twitter's the child of the board chat rooms that thrived during the 90s wrestling war. Part of my business plan is recreating that competitive spirit while avoiding WCW's errors, which is why I pace and don't blow through matches. AEW has many years worth of big matches up my sleeve. Making his debut in WWE at a young age, Dominik had a heck of an experience being in the middle of an on-screen custody battle between his father Ray and Eddie Guerrero. On the Out of Character podcast, Dom talked about his favorite moments from the feud and reactions from teachers and classmates. It was crazy being a kid and being on TV. I think the most exciting part about all of that was being away from school. I was in the 3rd grade and the last thing I wanted to do was be in school. I was getting to travel with dad and ride tricycles all around the arena, so why would I want to be in school? I would come back to school and all the teachers would be curious on what my home life was like because they didn't know if my dad was my dad or Eddie was my dad, or if there was this actual custody battle for me. Some of the teachers had to pull my mom aside or my dad aside when they'd come pick me up and ask them what's the deal because they didn't think it was healthy. Overall, I think the kids were curious too, like who my dad was, but I had to tell them I'm pretty sure my dad is Rey Mysterio. They even had me hooked at one point, like what's going on here? Dominik would go on to add that he thought if Eddie won the custody match at Summerslam, that he might have to live with him. I don't think I thought about it, but I thought I would eventually go home with Eddie if he won. I genuinely thought I'd probably end up going home with him because I remember them telling me they wanted to do the storyline and my dad pitched it to me and I was all on board with it, but I remember asking after like what's going to happen afterwards. I remember thinking as a kid like what if my dad doesn't win and I have to go home with Eddie? I never actually asked, but I thought about it. Personally, I would sit there and think about it. And this was your Pro Wrestling News Update. I hope you're all having a great day. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you later.